Welcome back to West Filma, the channel dedicated to breaking down the movies that shaped generations, revisiting the films everyone still argues about, and digging up the stories behind the stories. From hidden franchise lore and honest reviews to deep dive recaps and film analysis that actually respects your intelligence, you'll find it all right here. If you love movies as much as we do, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Alright, grab your popcorn, get comfortable, and let's get into today's movie. Today, Brandon Lee is remembered as one of the most promising talents of his generation. As the son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, Brandon carried enormous expectations throughout his career. Many people initially saw him only through the lens of his father's legacy, but Brandon worked hard to carve out his own identity as an actor and martial artist. Before Showdown in Little Tokyo, he appeared in several projects that hinted at his physical talent and charisma. He starred in the action film Legacy of Rage and later drew attention for his role in Laser Mission. These performances showed off his screen presence, but he still hadn't landed the breakthrough role that would define his career. Showdown in Little Tokyo turned out to be one of the most important steps in Brandon Lee's rise to prominence. Playing Johnny Murata, he brought humor, confidence, and energy to the film. Where Chris Kenner is serious and disciplined, Murata is relaxed and playful, and that contrast drives much of the movie's entertainment value. Lee showed off excellent comedic timing alongside genuinely impressive martial arts skills. Audiences came away remembering his charisma and his knack for balancing action with humor, qualities that suggested he was destined to become a major Hollywood star. The film helped raise his profile with American audiences and opened the door to bigger opportunities. Just a few years later, he'd earn critical recognition for his role in The Crow, a film that tragically became linked to his untimely death during production. Looking back, Showdown in Little Tokyo is often cited as one of the clearest early glimpses of the star power Brandon Lee possessed. The film's main antagonist, Yoshida, is played by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa. Before taking on this role, Tagawa had already built a reputation as a dependable character actor with a commanding presence. Born in Japan and raised across several countries, he brought a real sense of authenticity and cultural understanding to many of his performances. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Tagawa had become especially known for playing villains. His sharp features, intense gaze, and natural ability to project menace made him a go-to choice for antagonistic roles. In Showdown in Little Tokyo, he plays a ruthless Yakuza leader whose criminal empire serves as the central threat facing the film's heroes. When Showdown in Little Tokyo hit theaters in 1991, it entered a cinematic landscape undergoing real change. Action was one of the dominant genres in Hollywood at the time, driven by larger-than-life heroes, explosive set pieces, and stories built around crime, corruption, and justice. Though the film wasn't a major box office hit on release, its cultural impact grew steadily over the following decades. What initially looked like a fairly straightforward action movie gradually built a reputation as a cult classic, earning appreciation from audiences who recognized its unusual mix of martial arts action, buddy cop storytelling, and early representation of Asian culture in mainstream American action cinema. To really understand the film's cultural significance, it helps to look at the era it came from. The late 1980s and early 1990s marked the peak of the traditional action hero era, with stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, and Dolph Lundgren dominating theaters. Audiences expected physically imposing protagonists who could overcome overwhelming odds through skill, determination, and sheer toughness. Showdown in Little Tokyo embraced many of those conventions while also introducing elements that set it apart from other action films of its era. One of the film's most notable qualities is its portrayal of Japanese-American culture. The story unfolds largely within Los Angeles' Little Tokyo district, a real community with deep historical roots. At a time when many Hollywood productions treated Asian cultures as mysterious backdrops or leaned on simplistic stereotypes, Showdown in Little Tokyo made an effort to weave Japanese traditions, customs, and organized crime structures into its narrative. Modern viewers may spot limitations in how the film handled these subjects, but it still reflected a genuine attempt to bring Japanese cultural elements into a mainstream action movie. The character of Chris Kenner is a particularly interesting example of this. Raised in Japan after his parents were murdered, Kenner has a deep understanding of Japanese customs, language, and martial arts traditions, an unusual background that set him apart from many action heroes of the era. Rather than treating Japanese culture as entirely foreign, the film gives us a protagonist who has embraced and mastered aspects of it. That choice added complexity to the story and gave audiences something a little different from the standard action formula. The film also arrived during a period of growing American interest in Japanese culture. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Japan was widely seen as an economic powerhouse, and its technology, automobiles, electronics, and business practices were drawing enormous attention in the United States. That broader cultural awareness created an environment where audiences were increasingly familiar with Japanese influences, and Showdown in Little Tokyo tapped into that fascination through its martial arts traditions, yakuza organizations, Japanese architecture, and cultural symbolism. Perhaps the most historically significant part of the film is its place in Brandon Lee's career. Today, Lee is remembered not just for his talent but for the tragic circumstances surrounding his death during the making of The Crow. Because of that, fans often revisit his earlier films to get a better sense of the promise he showed as a performer. Showdown in Little Tokyo has become one of the most frequently discussed entries in his filmography, precisely because it showcases so many of the qualities that made him stand out. His charisma, humor, athleticism, and natural screen presence set him apart from many other action stars of the era, and over time fans have come to see the film as proof of what he might have achieved had his career not been cut short. As a result, it occupies a unique place in the broader conversation about Brandon Lee's legacy. The buddy cop dynamic between Chris Kenner and Johnny Murata also helped drive the film's lasting appeal. That genre had already found huge popularity through movies like Lethal Weapon, 48 HRS, and Tango Cash. Showdown in Little Tokyo followed that tradition but added its own cultural flavor through its focus on Japanese American communities and organized crime. The contrast between Kenner's discipline and Murata's laid-back attitude created a partnership that plenty of viewers found genuinely entertaining. As the home video market expanded through the 1990s, the film found a second life beyond theaters. Video rental stores became crucial distribution channels for action movies, and many films that had underperformed at the box office built devoted followings through repeated home viewings. Showdown in Little Tokyo benefited enormously from this shift as fans discovered it through rentals, cable broadcasts, and later DVD releases. And that gradual growth in popularity is what transformed it into a cult classic. Unlike blockbusters that dominate headlines right away, cult films tend to build their reputations slowly, through passionate fan communities, and this movie followed that pattern exactly. Viewers began recommending it to friends, swapping favorite scenes, and celebrating its unique blend of action and humor. The film's action sequences have also become part of its lasting legacy. Martial arts cinema was gaining popularity in Western markets during the late 20th century, as audiences grew more familiar with Hong Kong action films and Asian martial arts stars. Showdown in Little Tokyo helped bridge those traditions with mainstream American action filmmaking. Its fight choreography, sword combat, and hand-to-hand battles all contributed to a growing appreciation of martial arts action among Western audiences, and over the years, Several scenes and lines from the movie have taken on a near-legendary status among fans thanks to that distinctive combination of seriousness, humor, and unmistakable early 90s action movie excess. The story behind the making of Showdown in Little Tokyo is almost as interesting as the movie itself. Released in 1991, the film arrived during an intensely competitive stretch for action cinema, with Hollywood studios churning out a steady stream of movies built around martial arts, explosive gunfights, and charismatic heroes. While audiences usually only see what ends up on screen, the production behind Showdown in Little Tokyo involved plenty of creative decisions, challenges, and fascinating stories that shaped the final film. Looking behind the scenes reveals how the cast, crew, filmmakers, and stunt performers worked together to build a movie that would eventually become a cult favorite among action fans. The project came together at a time when studios were eager to capitalize on the popularity of buddy cop films and martial arts action. Movies like Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Tango Cash, and various martial arts productions had already proven that audiences loved fast-paced stories with strong personalities and spectacular action. The producers wanted to combine those elements while introducing a fresh cultural backdrop, and setting the story in Los Angeles' Little Tokyo district gave the project an identity that set it apart from many competing action films. The film was directed by Mark L. Lester, a filmmaker already well known in the action genre. Lester had previously directed several notable action movies, including Commando, one of the most iconic action films of the 1980s, which made him a logical choice for a production that demanded both large-scale action and a confident grasp of genre conventions. Lester approached Showdown in Little Tokyo with the goal of making it stylish and energetic. He understood that audiences wanted excitement, but he also wanted the characters themselves to be entertaining and memorable, and his experience with choreography, pacing, and visual storytelling helped keep the movie moving from start to finish. One of the most important behind-the-scenes decisions was casting Dolph Lundgren as Chris Kenner. By 1991, Lundgren was already a recognizable action star thanks to films like Rocky IV, Masters of the Universe, and The Punisher. The producers believed his imposing physical presence would make him an effective lead, and his martial arts training only strengthened his suitability for a role that demanded numerous combat sequences. What many viewers may not realize is that Lundgren brought more than physical strength to the production. He had a reputation for professionalism and discipline on set, and his academic background and international experience allowed him to connect with parts of the character that went beyond the usual action hero stereotype. Crew members often praised his preparation and his willingness to perform as much of the physical action himself as possible. Perhaps the most fascinating casting choice, though, was Brandon Lee as Johnny Murata. At the time, Lee was still working to establish himself in Hollywood. Even though he was Bruce Lee's son, he wanted to be recognized for his own talent rather than simply riding on his family name, and Showdown in Little Tokyo gave him one of his most important opportunities to prove himself as both an actor and a martial artist. Behind the scenes, Lee quickly became one of the most energetic personalities on set. Crew members frequently described him as charismatic, funny, and enthusiastic. He threw himself into the action scenes with real intensity and often participated heavily in rehearsals, and his martial arts background let him perform many complex movements convincingly, cutting down on the need for camera tricks or excessive stunt doubling. The chemistry between Lundgren and Lee became one of the movie's greatest strengths, and much of it developed naturally on set. While their personalities were quite different, the two men built a mutual respect through the demanding physical requirements of the shoot. Many scenes leaned on the contrast between Lundgren's seriousness and Lee's playful energy, a dynamic that came not just from the script but from the actors themselves. The action sequences required extensive planning and coordination. Early 90s action movies relied heavily on practical effects rather than CGI, so every fight, explosion, car stunt, and gun battle had to be carefully designed and executed in real environments. That placed enormous responsibility on the stunt team, which included experienced martial artists and stunt performers who helped create the film's distinctive combat scenes. Many supporting cast members had genuine martial arts expertise, which allowed the filmmakers to stage more authentic fights, and rehearsals often ran for hours as performers worked out the timing, movement, and camera positioning. One particularly tricky part of production was balancing realism with entertainment. The filmmakers wanted the fights to look dangerous while staying visually exciting, which required careful choreography. Punches, kicks, sword strikes, and falls all needed to look convincing without causing real injury. Every movement had to be coordinated precisely between actors, stunt performers, and camera operators. The film's sword fighting sequences presented their own additional challenges. Unlike simple fist fights, sword combat demanded exact timing and strict safety procedures, so actors spent significant time rehearsing weapon techniques to make sure scenes looked authentic while minimizing risk, since even small mistakes could lead to injury. Filming took place primarily in Los Angeles, with various locations standing in for the world of Little Tokyo and its surrounding criminal underworld. While some scenes were shot in areas connected to the real Little Tokyo district, filmmakers also used carefully chosen locations throughout the city. Production designers transformed these spaces with lighting, decoration, signage, and set dressing to create a cohesive visual environment. One of the goals was to present a version of Los Angeles that felt both familiar and exotic, a city that had appeared in countless action films but that here felt like a genuinely unique cultural setting. At first glance, Showdown in Little Tokyo looks like a straightforward action movie full of martial arts battles, gunfights, explosions, and colorful villains. But beneath that action-packed surface lies a surprisingly rich set of themes that give the story more depth than many viewers initially realize. Like a lot of memorable action films from the late 20th century, it uses its fast-paced narrative to explore ideas around identity, revenge, family, cultural belonging, justice, honor, and personal transformation, themes woven throughout the story that help elevate it beyond a simple battle between heroes and criminals. One of the most important of these is identity. Nearly every major character wrestles, in some way, with questions of who they are and where they belong, and that theme comes through most clearly in Chris Kenner. Though American by birth, he spent much of his upbringing in Japan after his parents were murdered, and as a result he exists between two cultures. Throughout the story, Kenner carries knowledge and values from both American and Japanese traditions. He understands Japanese customs, language, martial arts, and the concept of honor, yet he also works as a detective within an American police department. This dual identity lets him navigate worlds that many others can't fully understand, and the character symbolizes the idea that identity isn't defined solely by birthplace or ethnicity but is instead shaped by experience, culture, memory, and personal choice. Kenner's life shows that a person can belong to more than one world at once, a relatively uncommon idea for action films of the early 1990s, and one that adds an interesting layer to the story. Closely tied to identity is the theme of cultural belonging. The Little Tokyo setting is more than just a backdrop for action scenes. It symbolizes the intersection of different cultures existing within the same space. Throughout the film, characters move between traditional Japanese influences and modern American society, and the movie frequently contrasts old traditions with contemporary realities, so ancient codes of honor sitting alongside organized crime, traditional ceremonies appearing next to modern law enforcement. This constant blending of cultures reflects the complicated experience of people who live between different worlds. For Kenner, Understanding both cultures becomes a strength rather than a weakness. He succeeds because he can bridge these worlds and read situations from multiple perspectives. The film suggests that cultural knowledge itself creates power, wisdom, and understanding. Revenge is another major theme, and in many ways it's the emotional engine driving the story forward. Chris Kenner's personal history is defined by tragedy. The murder of his parents left psychological scars that continue to shape his actions years later. Unlike revenge stories that focus purely on anger, Showdown in Little Tokyo presents revenge as a complicated emotional burden that Kenner carries with him constantly, where the desire for justice becomes tangled up with personal pain and unresolved grief. The villain Yoshida symbolizes the lingering presence of that trauma. He's not merely a criminal adversary but a painful chapter from Kenner's life that has never fully healed, and their conflict becomes more than a battle between law enforcement and organized crime. It becomes a confrontation with the past itself. The film even raises the question of whether revenge can truly bring peace. While defeating Yoshida offers a sense of closure, the story suggests that revenge alone can't erase loss. And Kenner's emotional journey implies that real healing comes from acceptance rather than vengeance. Family is another significant thread running through the narrative. Although traditional family structures are largely absent from the story, family remains a powerful force shaping many of the characters. Kenner's motivations trace back to the loss of his parents. Their memory shapes his values and his commitment to justice, and even though they're physically gone, they remain emotionally present throughout. The Yakuza organization depicted in the film also functions as a kind of familiar. Criminal organizations often describe themselves in that language, emphasizing loyalty, obedience, and hierarchy, and Yoshida demands absolute devotion from his followers while punishing betrayal harshly. The contrast between these two forms of family matters. Kenner's family represents love, guidance, and moral values, while Yoshida's criminal family represents fear, control, and corruption. The story invites viewers to weigh these different models of loyalty and belonging against each other. Partnership and friendship are additional central themes. The relationship between Chris Kenner and Johnny Murata forms the emotional heart of the film. At the start, the two men have very different personalities and approaches to police work. Kenner disciplined, serious, and methodical. Murata relaxed, humorous, and impulsive. Their differences create tension at first, but over time they build mutual respect and trust, and their partnership comes to symbolize the idea that strength often comes from cooperation rather than individual achievement. Neither character could succeed alone. Their complementary skills let them overcome obstacles that would defeat them separately. This theme echoes one of the most enduring messages in buddy cop films, that true partnership means accepting differences and valuing perspectives that differ from your own. Honor plays a particularly important role throughout the movie. Several characters live by personal codes that guide their actions. Kenner's understanding of Japanese traditions includes concepts of duty, respect, discipline, and honor, while Yoshida also speaks and acts in the language of honor, though his version is corrupted by selfish ambition and cruelty. That creates an interesting thematic contrast. Both men value honor, but they define it in very different ways. For Kenner, honor means protecting others and acting with integrity. For Yoshida, it becomes a justification for power and domination. The conflict between these two interpretations highlights how easily noble principles can be twisted into tools of oppression. Justice, too, serves as a foundational theme running underneath everything else. One of the biggest reasons Showdown in Little Tokyo still attracts viewers decades after its release is its distinctive visual style. While the film is often remembered for its action sequences, martial arts combat, and memorable performances, its visual presentation plays an equally important role in establishing its identity. Directed by Mark L. Lester, the movie embraces many of the stylistic hallmarks of late 80s and early 90s action cinema through its lighting, camera movement, production design, framing, color choices, practical effects, and editing. The result is an atmosphere that feels both energetic and unmistakably tied to its era. The film's visual language immediately signals that viewers are entering a heightened cinematic world. Unlike realistic police dramas that lean on authenticity and restraint, Showdown in Little Tokyo embraces stylization of every location, action sequence, and character introduction is designed to maximize visual impact, because the filmmakers understood that audiences expected spectacle and built nearly every frame with entertainment in mind. One of the most noticeable elements of the cinematography is its use of contrast. Throughout the movie, scenes alternate between brightly lit environments and shadow-filled interiors, an approach that reinforces the story's central conflict between law enforcement and organized crime. The criminal underworld is often depicted through dark clubs, hidden corridors, secret meeting places, and dimly lit rooms that create a sense of mystery and danger, and shadows dominate many scenes involving Yoshida and his organization, visually reinforcing secrecy, corruption, and hidden threats. Scenes involving police work, by contrast, tend to feature brighter lighting and more open spaces. This difference helps viewers instinctively grasp the moral divisions within the story, and while it isn't always absolute, that visual contrast between darkness and light supports the broader themes of justice versus corruption. Color also plays a major role throughout the film. Like many action movies of its era, Showdown in Little Tokyo uses a vibrant palette designed to make scenes visually memorably. Neon lights, colorful signage, glowing interiors, and vivid costume choices appear throughout, and the Little Tokyo setting gives the filmmakers plenty of opportunities to bring in rich visual textures inspired by Japanese culture. Red, gold, black, and deep blue tones recur across various locations, contributing to the atmosphere while helping the film stand apart from generic urban action movies. Red in particular carries weight throughout cinema history. It's often symbolized danger, violence, passion, and power, and in Showdown in Little Tokyo it appears frequently in locations connected to Yoshida and the Yakuza, whether through decorative elements, lighting, or costume details, reinforcing the threat posed by the criminal world. The production design works closely with the cinematography to create a visually distinctive environment. Rather than presenting Los Angeles as a generic cityscape, the filmmakers emphasize the cultural identity of Little Tokyo through traditional Japanese architectural influences, decorative motifs, lanterns, artwork, and symbols woven into many of the locations. This approach serves several purposes. It strengthens the film's identity within a crowded genre, reinforces its exploration of cultural intersection, and provides visually interesting backdrops that enhance the overall experience. Many of the film's interiors are carefully designed to communicate character and status. Yoshida's environments, for instance, are filled with symbols of wealth, authority, and tradition, his headquarters combining elegance with menace in a way that reflects both his sophistication and his brutality. Every design choice shapes how the audience perceives him before he even speaks. Camera work is another major strength of the film. Action cinema depends heavily on effective cinematography, since audiences need to follow complex movement while staying emotionally engaged, and the camera operators and director work together to keep combat scenes clear and exciting. Unlike some modern action films that lean on rapid editing and shaky camera work, Showdown in Little Tokyo generally favors clarity. Fight scenes often use wider shots that let viewers see performers executing martial arts techniques, showing off the physical abilities of actors like Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee while preserving the authenticity of the choreography. The camera frequently moves with the action rather than obscuring it. Tracking shots, bands, and controlled movements help maintain visual energy while letting audiences appreciate the performer's skill, a style that reflects an era when practical stunt work and martial arts expertise were central attractions of action cinema. Close-up shots are used strategically throughout the film. During confrontations, the camera often tightens on characters' faces to emphasize tension and emotional intensity, letting viewers read determination, anger, fear, and confidence. The rivalry between Chris Kenner and Yoshida benefits particularly from this technique, since their encounters frequently use close framing that highlights the personal nature of their conflictor by focusing on facial expressions. The film communicates emotional stakes that go beyond physical violence. Framing choices throughout the movie also reinforce relationships between characters. During scenes involving Kenner and Murata, the two are frequently positioned together within the same frame, a visual strategy that gradually strengthens the sense of partnership between them. Early on, their differing personalities create distance, but as their friendship develops, the framing increasingly presents them as a unified team. While Showdown in Little Tokyo is often celebrated for its action sequences, martial arts combat, and charismatic performances, one of its most overlooked aspects is its soundtrack and sound design. Audio plays a critical role in shaping the audience's experience, how scenes feel, how characters come across, how tension builds, and from its energetic score to its carefully crafted sound effects, the film uses audio as a genuine storytelling tool. Together, the soundtrack and sound design create excitement, suspense, emotion, and atmosphere, helping turn what could have been a routine action movie into something more memorable. Action films rely heavily on sound because action itself is so physical. Punches, kicks, gunshots, explosions, engines, footsteps, and environmental noise all contribute to the illusion that audiences are witnessing real events, and the sound department behind Showdown in Little Tokyo clearly understood that audio needed to feel impactful. Every major action sequence was designed not just to look exciting but to sound powerful. The musical score forms the foundation of the film's audio identity, reflecting many of the stylistic trends that dominated action cinema in the late 80s and early 90s. Electronic instrumentation, driving rhythms, dramatic orchestral elements, and suspenseful atmospheric sounds combine to support the movie's fast-paced tone. One of the score's primary jobs is establishing momentum from the opening scenes, signaling that audiences are entering a world of danger and action rather than something passive. The music actively pushes scenes forward, building anticipation before confrontations and ramping up excitement during action sequences. The composers clearly understood the importance of pacing, and musical cues often mirror the rhythm of the story itself, growing more restrained during quieter investigative scenes and more intense during moments of conflict. A constant adjustment that helps keep audiences engaged throughout. The score also contributes meaningfully to character development. Kenner and Murata are very different personalities, and the music often reflects that. Scenes centered on Kenner, who's disciplined, serious, and driven by his past, tend to feature more dramatic and suspenseful musical elements, while Murata, who brings humor, confidence, and unpredictability, often gets music with a more playful energy when he's on screen. The score doesn't assign obvious themes to each character the way some films do, but it subtly reinforces their contrasting personalities all the same. Yoshida benefits particularly from the soundtrack. Antagonists often need musical support to establish their presence before they even speak, and scenes involving him frequently feature darker, more ominous cues, low tones, tense rhythms, and threatening atmospheres that communicate danger and power. Music becomes especially important during confrontations between Kenner and Yoshida, where their shared history gives the conflict emotional weight that the score helps amplify, growing more dramatic as the story builds toward its climax. Another interesting aspect of the soundtrack is how it incorporates elements that complement the film's cultural setting. Because the story takes place largely in Little Tokyo and involves Japanese criminal organizations, the music occasionally brings in sounds and tonal influences that evoke Japanese traditions. These elements are generally blended into the larger action score rather than dominating it, resulting in a soundtrack that feels connected to the setting without leaning too heavily on cultural stereotype, as though it supports the atmosphere of Little Tokyo while keeping the energetic style audiences expected from a Hollywood action movie. Action scenes provide some of the clearest examples of how music contributes to storytelling. During combat sequences, the score often speeds up, increasing tempo and intensity to create a sense of urgency that pulls viewers into the outcome emotionally. The relationship between music and movement matters especially during martial arts fights. Brandon Lee's fast, precise combat style benefits from energetic musical accompaniment that emphasizes speed and agility, while Dolph Lundgren's more powerful, deliberate fighting style is supported by music that conveys strength and determination. These choices help audiences interpret the action emotionally rather than just watching physical movement unfold, and viewers experience excitement, anticipation, and tension through the combination of visual and auditory information. Equally important is the film's sound design. While music shapes mood, sound effects create realism and impact to every punch, kick, gunshot, explosion, and crash has to feel convincing, and the sound team worked carefully to construct effects that would maximize audience engagement. Fight scenes depend heavily on effective sound design. Martial arts combat on screen often uses enhanced audio to exaggerate impacts, since in reality many strikes wouldn't produce the dramatic sounds we hear in films, but these enhanced effects help communicate force and intensity to viewers. In Showdown in Little Tokyo, punches land with sharp impacts, kicks generate satisfying force, and weapon strikes produce dramatic audio feedback, all of which contributes significantly to the excitement of the combat scenes. Without them, the action would feel far less dynamic. Gunfire also plays a major role in the film's soundscape. Each weapon has a distinct audio profile that helps create realism, and echoes, reverberations, and environmental reactions further enhance these scenes. Explosions are another area where the sound design shines, since action cinema relies so heavily on explosive moments to deliver spectacle, and audio is essential to making those moments land. When Showdown in Little Tokyo arrived in theaters in 1991, it entered an extremely crowded and competitive action movie marketplace. The genre was in one of its most successful periods, with audiences regularly flocking to films starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, and other major action icons. Against that backdrop, Showdown in Little Tokyo faced a tough challenge in standing out among so many high-profile releases. While it didn't achieve major commercial success during its initial theatrical run, its reputation evolved significantly over time. What began as a modest action release eventually became a cult favorite, earning appreciation from viewers who discovered strengths that many contemporary critics either overlooked or underestimated. Upon release, critical reactions were mixed to negative. Many professional reviewers approached the film through the lens of traditional film criticism, focusing on its familiar plot structure, exaggerated action sequences, and reliance on genre conventions. Critics often argued that the movie followed a formula already well established by countless buddy cop and action films from the 1980s, and several reviewers felt the narrative offered few surprises. So the story of two mismatched police officers battling a powerful criminal organization felt like familiar territory by the standards of the time. Critics noted its similarities to films like Lethal Weapon, 48 HRS, and Tango Cash, and as a result, some reviews described the movie as entertaining but unoriginal. Another common criticism targeted the screenplay. Certain reviewers argued that character development was limited in that the script prioritized action over deeper storytelling. While the film does explore themes like revenge, identity, and cultural belonging, Many critics focused mainly on its surface-level action rather than its thematic content. The dialogue also drew discussion. Like many action films of the era, Showdown in Little Tokyo is full of one-liners, humorous exchanges, and exaggerated moments meant to entertain, and while some critics found these charming and fun, others saw them as evidence of a simplistic script. That divide would continue to shape opinions about the movie for years afterward. Despite the criticism, several aspects of the film earned praise, even from less enthusiastic reviewers. One of the most consistently celebrated elements was the chemistry between Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. Critics frequently acknowledged that the two actors worked well together and elevated material that might otherwise have felt routine. Lundgren's performance was generally seen as dependable and effective. By 1991, audiences were already familiar with his action star persona, and reviewers recognized that he brought physical credibility and screen presence to the role of Chris Kenner. Some critics felt the character leaned on familiar action hero conventions, but most agreed Lundgren played the role convincingly. Brandon Lee received particularly positive attention. Even among reviewers who disliked the film overall, his charisma often stood out as a major strength. Critics noted his energy, athleticism, humor, and natural screen presence, and many recognized that he had qualities that could make him a significant star. Looking back today, those observations feel especially prescient. Showdown in Little Tokyo is frequently cited as one of the clearest demonstrations of Brandon Lee's potential before his breakthrough in The Crow, and modern audiences often revisit the film specifically to appreciate his work and see the promise critics spotted early in his career. The action sequences also received a mixed but generally favorable response. Supporters praised the film's martial arts choreography, practical stunts, and energetic pacing, with Brandon Lee's fight scenes drawing particular appreciation because of his genuine martial arts ability. Some reviewers, though, felt the movie occasionally prioritized spectacle over realism, a common criticism at the time, especially for action films embracing larger-than-life storytelling. Ironically, many of the elements criticized then would later become part of the film's appeal among cult movie enthusiasts. Commercially, the film struggled to achieve significant box office success. Released during a period crowded with major studio productions, it faced intense competition for audience attention, and its theatrical performance never established it as a blockbuster. Many industry observers initially viewed it as a relatively minor entry in the action genre. Yet the story of Showdown in Little Tokyo didn't end with its theatrical run. Like many cult classics, the film went through a gradual re-evaluation once it reached home video audiences. During the 1990s, video rental stores became an essential part of film culture, and movies that had performed modestly in theaters often found entirely new audiences through rentals and cable broadcasts. This secondary market proved crucial for Showdown in Little Tokyo. Action fans discovered the film through repeated TV screenings and video rentals, and free from the expectations that came with its theatrical release, viewers often appreciated it for exactly what it was: a fast-paced, entertaining action film with memorable characters and impressive martial arts sequences. As home video popularity grew, so did the movie's reputation, with fans recommending it to others as an underrated gem from the golden age of action cinema, and word of mouth gradually transformed public perception of the film. Brandon Lee's tragic death in 1993 also shaped the movie's long-term reception. Following the success of The Crow and the widespread attention surrounding Lee's passing, audiences grew increasingly interested in his earlier work, and Showdown in Little Tokyo was among the films that benefited from that renewed interest. Many viewers revisiting it after Lee's death came away impressed by his performance. His charisma, confidence, and martial arts skill became even more appreciated in retrospect, and as a result, the film gained additional cultural significance as part of his relatively small body of work. More than 3 decades after its release, Showdown in Little Tokyo occupies a unique position in the history of action cinema. Although it wasn't a major blockbuster when it came out in 1991, The film gradually earned recognition as a cult classic and became an important part of the careers of several key people involved in its production. Its influence extends well beyond box office numbers and critical reviews. Its legacy shows up in discussions about action films, martial arts cinema, buddy cop storytelling, Brandon Lee's career, and the broader appreciation of practical action filmmaking from the late 20th century. While it may not have reshaped the industry on the scale of the biggest Hollywood hits, Showdown in Little Tokyo has left a lasting mark that continues to resonate with audiences and filmmakers alike. One of the most significant parts of the film's legacy is how it helped preserve the image of the classic action movie hero. The late 1980s and early 1990s are often regarded as the golden age of action cinema, a period when audiences embraced larger-than-life protagonists who combined physical strength, confidence, and unwavering determination. Showdown in Little Tokyo captures many of the qualities that define that era. Dolph Lundgren's Chris Kenner represents a traditional action hero archetype. He highly skilled, physically imposing, and driven by a strong sense of justice, reflecting a style of action filmmaking that prized competence and personal courage. As cinema trends evolved and action heroes became more vulnerable or psychologically complex, films like Showdown in Little Tokyo began to serve as reminders of an earlier approach to the genre. For many modern viewers, the movie functions as a kind of time capsule, preserving a tone, style, and storytelling method that defined action entertainment during a particularly influential period, which is exactly why it remains popular among audiences looking to revisit or discover the classic action experience. The film's connection to Brandon Lee has perhaps become its single most important element of lasting significance. At the time of release, Lee was still establishing himself as a performer. Though he'd appeared in several projects, he hadn't yet achieved widespread recognition, and Showdown in Little Tokyo offered one of the clearest early demonstrations of his potential. After his tragic death during the production of The Crow in 1993, interest in his earlier work increased dramatically, and fans and film historians began revisiting his performances to better understand what might have been. Showdown in Little Tokyo quickly emerged as one of the most frequently discussed entries in his filmography, and today many viewers consider it an essential Brandon Lee performance. His charisma, humor, athleticism, and natural screen presence are evident throughout, and watching him play off Dolph Lundgren, perform martial arts sequences, and deliver his lines lets audiences appreciate the qualities that made him such a promising talent. As a result, the film has become part of the larger conversation around Brandon Lee's legacy, serving as both entertainment and historical evidence of a career that was tragically cut short. New generations of fans often discover the movie specifically because of their interest in his work. The film also helped sustain the popularity of martial arts action within mainstream Western cinema. During the late 20th century, audiences increasingly embraced martial arts films from Hong Kong and other international markets, while Hollywood looked for ways to fold martial arts elements into its own productions. Showdown in Little Tokyo helped bridge these traditions. While fundamentally an American action movie, it features extensive martial arts combat and draws inspiration from Japanese cultural themes, and the success of its action sequences showed that audiences enjoyed seeing martial arts woven into broader action narratives. It wasn't solely responsible for this trend, but it contributed to a growing acceptance of martial arts as a central component of mainstream action filmmaking, and many later productions continued blending traditional action elements with martial arts choreography in similar ways. The buddy cop genre also benefited from the film's influence. While movies like Lethal Weapon had already established the formula, Showdown in Little Tokyo showed how cultural differences and contrasting backgrounds could add fresh dimensions to it. The partnership between Chris Kenner and Johnny Murata became one of the film's most celebrated aspects of their differing personalities, combined with growing mutual respect and friendship, created a dynamic that resonated widely with audiences, and future action films continued exploring similar partnerships. often pairing characters from different backgrounds to generate dramatic tension and humor. Another important part of the film's legacy involves its portrayal of Japanese culture and organized crime. Modern viewers may recognize limitations in how the movie approached these subjects, but it nevertheless introduced many audiences to concepts like the Yakuza, Japanese traditions, and cultural symbolism. At a time when most mainstream action films focused exclusively on Western settings and conflicts, Showdown in Little Tokyo brought international influences into its narrative, contributing to a broader trend of Hollywood exploring stories involving diverse cultures and global perspectives. The movie's visual style has also shaped how audiences remember the action genre of its era. Neon lighting, urban landscapes, practical effects, martial arts choreography, and dramatic confrontations combine to create imagery closely associated with early 90s action cinema, and film enthusiasts often cite Showdown in Little Tokyo when discussing the aesthetic qualities of that period. The movie embodies visual characteristics that modern audiences find nostalgic and appealing, and as appreciation for practical filmmaking techniques has grown, its visual approach has received increasing recognition. The rise of home video played a crucial role in shaping the film's long-term influence. During its theatrical run, it reached a relatively limited audience compared to major blockbusters, but that would change significantly over time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Showdown in Little Tokyo is how audience perceptions of it have evolved. When it was first released in 1991, viewers experienced it within the context of a thriving action movie era. At that moment, it was simply one of many action films competing for attention in a marketplace full of explosions, martial arts, buddy cop partnerships, and larger-than-life heroes. As years passed and new generations discovered the film, though, interpretations of it changed significantly. Today, it's viewed not just as an entertaining action movie but as a cultural artifact reflecting the values, trends, and cinematic traditions of its time. For audiences in the early 1990s, the film largely delivered exactly what they expected from the genre. Action fans wanted excitement, memorable heroes, dangerous villains, and spectacular confrontations, and viewers hoping for intense martial arts sequences and high-energy entertainment generally found plenty of both. Many were particularly drawn to the chemistry between Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. Their contrasting personalities created a dynamic that resonated strongly, with Chris Kenner representing discipline, experience, and emotional seriousness, and Johnny Murata bringing humor, confidence, and youthful energy. Audiences enjoyed watching these different personalities clash, argue, and ultimately work together, a dynamic that reflected a broader trend within action cinema. Buddy cop films were extremely popular in the late 1980s and early 1990s precisely because they combined action with character-driven humor, and viewers appreciated relationships that felt entertaining and relatable even within highly exaggerated narratives. Showdown in Little Tokyo tapped successfully into that appeal. At the time of release, many viewers also responded positively to the film's martial arts content. Martial arts cinema was growing in popularity across Western markets, and audiences were becoming increasingly familiar with Asian action stars and international martial arts films. Brandon Lee's presence added particular excitement, since many viewers were curious about the son of Bruce Lee. For some, watching Lee perform was one of the movie's biggest draws. Even before he achieved wider recognition, viewers noticed his charisma and athletic ability, and plenty of fans left the theater believing he had the potential to become a major action star. Following Lee's death in 1993, audience interpretations of the movie shifted dramatically. What had originally been viewed mainly as an action film took on deeper emotional significance. Fans revisiting Showdown in Little Tokyo began seeing it through the lens of Lee's unfinished career, and the movie became a reminder of lost potential. Audiences often focus on the qualities that made Lee stand out: his charm, humor, physical skill, and natural screen presence. And for many, The film evolved into both a celebration of what he accomplished and a reflection on what he might have achieved had he lived longer. That emotional connection remains one of the reasons the film continues to resonate with audiences today. And while the action and entertainment value still matter, many viewers now approach the movie specifically as a chance to appreciate Brandon Lee's talent. Different generations have interpreted the film in different ways. Audiences who saw it during its original release often remember it as part of a larger era of action cinema, and for them, the movie carries real nostalgia. It evokes video rental stores, cable television screenings, and a period when practical action filmmaking dominated the genre. These viewers tend to appreciate the movie because it captures the spirit of a specific cinematic age. The practical stunts, straightforward storytelling, memorable villains, and energetic action all reflect qualities many fans associate with the golden age of action films. Younger audiences often approach the film from a different angle. Having grown up in an era dominated by digital effects and sprawling cinematic universes, modern viewers sometimes find Showdown in Little Tokyo refreshingly direct. The story is relatively simple. The characters are clearly defined, and the action is easy to follow. Many younger viewers express real appreciation for the film's practical effects. Modern action movies often lean heavily on CGI, while Showdown in Little Tokyo showcases real stunts, physical choreography, and practical explosions, and audiences frequently comment on how authentic and tangible these sequences feel. The film's pacing also generates interesting reactions. Contemporary blockbusters often run well over 2 hours and juggle multiple interconnected storylines, whereas Showdown in Little Tokyo moves quickly and stays focused on its central narrative. Many viewers appreciate that efficiency, describing the movie as concise and entertaining. Audience interpretation of the film's cultural elements has evolved too. During its original release, many viewers saw the Japanese influences mainly as exotic or visually interesting. A Little Tokyo, the Yakuza, martial arts traditions, and cultural references helped distinguish the film from other action movies of the time. Modern audiences tend to engage more critically with these elements. Some appreciate the effort to weave Japanese cultural elements into a mainstream action narrative, while others note that certain portrayals reflect the limitations and stereotypes common in Hollywood productions of the period. That doesn't necessarily diminish enjoyment of the film. Instead, many modern viewers approach it with an awareness of historical context, recognizing both its strengths and its shortcomings while still appreciating its place in the evolution of action cinema. The character of Chris Kenner often generates particularly interesting interpretations. Some viewers see him as a symbol of cultural duality. His life between American and Japanese worlds reflects themes of identity and belonging that resonate with audiences from diverse backgrounds. And for those who've experienced multicultural environments themselves, Kenner's journey can feel surprisingly relatable despite the exaggerated action narrative around it. Although Showdown in Little Tokyo is mostly remembered for its explosive action, martial arts combat, and buddy cop entertainment, the film also contains meaningful character development that gives the story real emotional weight. Beneath the gunfights and confrontations lies a narrative centered on personal growth, revenge, friendship, loyalty, identity, and redemption. The characters aren't merely vehicles for action scenes, they each go through journeys that feed into the film's larger themes. The development may not be as complex as what you'd find in a dramatic character study, but it's effective within the framework of an action movie and plays a real role in why the film remains memorable. The central character of the story is Detective Chris Kenner, played by Dolph Lundgren. Kenner begins the film as a highly capable police officer who comes across as confident, disciplined, and emotionally controlled. At first glance, he resembles the traditional action hero common throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s. But as the story unfolds, audiences discover that much of his behavior is shaped by unresolved trauma from his past. As a child, Kenner witnessed the murder of his parents, a tragedy that fundamentally altered the course of his life. Raised in Japan afterward, he developed a deep understanding of Japanese culture, language, traditions, and martial arts experiences that created a man who exists between two worlds, never fully belonging to either one. At the start of the film, Kenna's primary motivation appears to be his dedication to law enforcement. But viewers gradually realize that his pursuit of justice is deeply tied to personal pain. The criminal organization he's investigating is linked to the same darkness that destroyed his family years earlier. That connection transforms his mission from a professional assignment into a deeply personal journey. Throughout the film, Kenna has to confront not only dangerous criminals but also memories he's carried for most of his life, and his conflict with Yoshida forces him to revisit emotional wounds that have never fully healed. One of Kenna's most important developments is learning to trust others. Initially he operates largely as a solitary figure. His experience and skill make him self-reliant, but that independence also creates emotional distance between him and the people around him. Johnny Murata's arrival challenges that tendency. At first, Kenna seems frustrated by Murata's informal attitude and unconventional methods, and their personalities clash repeatedly, creating tension within the partnership. Over time, though, Kenna learns to appreciate Murata's strengths and realizes that trust and cooperation aren't weaknesses but valuable assets. By the film's conclusion, Kenna has evolved from a largely isolated individual into someone willing to rely on and support another persona. One of the most significant parts of his character arc, Johnny Murata, played by Brandon Lee, undergoes a different but equally important journey. He initially comes across as carefree, humorous, and somewhat reckless. Compared to Kenna, he seems less serious and more interested in enjoying life, and his confidence often shows up through jokes, sarcasm, and a relaxed approach to situations. Because of that personality, audiences might initially assume Murata functions primarily as comic relief. But the film gradually reveals more depth beneath his playful exterior. As the investigation grows more dangerous, Murata shows real courage, loyalty, and professionalism. One of his key developments involves proving himself as more than just Kenna's sidekick. Throughout the story, he repeatedly demonstrates intelligence, resourcefulness, and bravery, and his martial arts skill and willingness to face danger establish him as an equal partner rather than a secondary character. Murata also learns valuable lessons from Kenna. While he brings spontaneity and humor to the partnership, Kenna provides discipline and experience, and their relationship becomes mutually beneficial because each man has qualities the other lacks. By the end of the film, Murata has matured without losing the personality that makes him appealing. He remains humorous and energetic, but he gains a greater appreciation for responsibility and sacrifice, a balance that lets his character evolve while preserving the qualities audiences enjoy. The friendship between Kenna and Murata represents the emotional heart of the movie. Their relationship follows a classic buddy cop structure, but it works because both characters shape one another's development. Initially, they approach situations from vastly different perspectives. Kenna cautious and methodical, Murata impulsive and unconventional. Those differences create conflict, but also opportunities for growth. And as the story progresses, mutual respect gradually replaces skepticism. They come to recognize each other's strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses, and that evolution transforms their partnership into a genuine friendship. The success of this relationship depends heavily on the chemistry between Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. Their performances make the friendship believable and let audiences invest emotionally in their journey. By the film's end, viewers understand that both men have become stronger because of their partnership. The primary antagonist, Yoshida, serves as both a villain and a symbolic representation of Kenna's past. Played by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, Yoshida is far more than a generic criminal mastermind. He embodies themes of power, corruption, revenge, and obsession. One of the most underrated aspects of Showdown in Little Tokyo is how its costume and set design contribute to the film's identity. While audiences often remember the movie for its action sequences, martial arts battles, and charismatic performances, Much of its atmosphere is built through visual details that work quietly in the background. The clothing worn by the characters, the environments they inhabit, and the overall design philosophy of the production all help establish tone, communicate personality, reinforce themes, and immerse viewers in the world of the story. Released in 1991, the film reflects many of the visual trends associated with late 80s and early 90s action cinema, but it also incorporates unique cultural influences that distinguish it from other action movies of the period, blending urban American settings with Japanese-inspired design elements to create a visual world that feels both familiar and distinctive. Costume design plays a significant role in establishing character identity. In action films, clothing often serves practical storytelling functions. Costumes communicate occupation, status, personality, confidence, and even moral alignment, and the wardrobe choices in Showdown in Little Tokyo follow that tradition effectively. Chris Kenner, played by Dolph Lundgren, is typically dressed in a way that reflects professionalism, discipline, and authority. His clothing choices emphasize functionality over style, and whether he's wearing police attire, tactical gear, or casual clothing, Kenner consistently projects control and competence. The fit and structure of his wardrobe also reinforce his physical presence. Lundgren's imposing stature naturally draws attention, and the costume design works to emphasize his role as a powerful, experienced law enforcement officer. His clothing is generally practical, clean, and straightforward, reflecting his disciplined mindset, with very little unnecessary decoration. That simplicity communicates confidence. He doesn't need flashy clothing to establish authority, because his actions and demeanor already accomplish that. The costume design subtly reinforces the idea that Kenner is a man defined by purpose rather than appearance. Johnny Murata, played by Brandon Lee, provides an interesting contrast. His wardrobe reflects his more relaxed, unconventional personality, is still appropriate for a police officer, but noticeably less rigid than Kenner's. Murata's style communicates energy, confidence, and individuality, and the costume designers clearly understood that his personality needed to stand apart visually from his partners. Subtle differences in wardrobe help reinforce the contrast between the two men, supporting the buddy cop dynamic at the center of the film. Audiences can immediately sense that these characters approach life differently, even before either says a word. Brandon Lee's natural charisma enhances these choices further. His confidence turns even simple wardrobe selections into something memorable, giving us a character who feels stylish without seeming overly concerned with fashion. The contrast between Kenner and Murata extends beyond personality. Their wardrobes symbolize two different approaches to law enforcement and life itself, Kenner representing structure and discipline, Murata representing flexibility and spontaneity, with the costume design helping communicate these themes visually throughout the film. The villain Yoshida, played by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, receives some of the most distinctive costume treatment in the movie. As the leader of a powerful criminal organization, Yoshida needs to project authority, sophistication, and danger, and his wardrobe frequently combines elegance with intimidation. A carefully tailored clothing, luxurious fabrics, and deliberate styling all communicate wealth and power. Every aspect of his appearance is designed to establish him as someone who commands respect and fear. Unlike many action movie villains who rely purely on physical menace, Yoshida's costumes emphasize intelligence and control, suggesting a man who values status and image. A fitting match for his role as a leader who exercises influence over a vast criminal enterprise. The costume design also reflects broader themes around power and corruption. While Kenner's clothing emphasizes service and practicality, Yoshida's wardrobe often symbolizes privilege and domination, reinforcing the moral divide between hero and villain. Tiakari's character, Minako Okada, adds another layer to the film's visual design. Her costumes help balance elegance, vulnerability, and strength, and as a character caught up in dangerous circumstances, Her wardrobe reflects both her beauty and her resilience. The costume designers avoided making her appearance feel disconnected from the world around her. Instead, her clothing helps establish her role within the narrative while contributing to the film's broader visual aesthetic. Through color, style, and presentation, her wardrobe supports her character's emotional journey. Beyond costumes, set design is one of the film's greatest strengths. The story unfolds primarily in and around Los Angeles' Little Tokyo district, and the filmmakers worked hard to create environments that felt culturally distinctive and visually engaging. The production design team faced the challenge of balancing realism with cinematic style. The settings needed to feel authentic enough to support the story while remaining visually exciting for audiences, and the team achieved that by combining real urban locations with carefully designed interiors and decorative elements. Many of the film's environments incorporate Japanese-inspired visual motifs. Traditional artwork, lanterns, architectural details, calligraphy, decorative screens, and cultural symbols appear throughout the movie, helping establish a sense of place and reinforcing the story's cultural themes. Importantly, the set design doesn't rely solely on these details. Instead, Japanese influences are blended with the modern urban landscape of Los Angeles, reflecting the film's broader exploration of cultural intersection and identity. The screenplay of Showdown in Little Tokyo plays a crucial role in defining the movie's identity. While the film is often remembered for its martial arts action, explosive confrontations, and memorable performances, the script provides the foundation that lets all those elements work. Like many successful action films of the late 1980s and early 1990s, the screenplay balances action, humor, character development, tension, and emotional stakes. It doesn't aim for the complexity of a dramatic character study, but it succeeds in creating an entertaining narrative full of memorable exchanges, distinctive personalities, and dialogue that fans still quote decades after the film's release. At its core, the screenplay embraces many of the conventions of classic action cinema. The story follows two police detectives investigating a dangerous criminal organization while confronting their own personal demons and escalating threats. A premise that's fairly straightforward on paper. The script's effectiveness comes from how it combines familiar genre elements with strong character dynamics and a unique cultural backdrop. One of its greatest strengths is its understanding of pacing. Action films depend heavily on rhythm. Too much dialogue can slow momentum, while non-stop action can wear an audience out. And the writers structure the narrative so that quieter scenes give room for character interaction before the story accelerates into the next action sequence. That balance helps maintain engagement, since every conversation serves a purpose. Whether it's advancing the plot, revealing character traits, establishing relationships, or building anticipation for what's coming. As a result, the film rarely feels stagnant despite its relatively simple structure. The dialogue itself reflects the style of action movies from the period. Characters generally speak with confidence and directness, and conversations tend to stay concise. Avoiding lengthy speeches or excessive exposition. Information gets delivered efficiently, letting the story keep moving without unnecessary delays. Chris Kenner's dialogue reflects his disciplined personality. He speaks with authority and purpose, choosing his words carefully rather than engaging in unnecessary conversation, which reinforces his image as a serious, experienced detective. Many of his lines communicate professionalism and determination. He rarely wastes words, and his dialogue often emphasizes focus and responsibility, helping establish him as the more reserved half of the central partnership. That said, the screenplay also allows glimpses of emotional vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior. As the story explores his traumatic past, certain conversations reveal the pain and unresolved grief driving many of his actions, adding depth to the character and keeping him from becoming a purely one-dimensional action hero. Johnny Murata's dialogue provides an effective contrast. Where Kenner is measured and serious, Murata is witty, playful, and often sarcastic, and much of the film's humor comes through his conversations and reactions. The writers clearly understood that Murata needed to bring energy and personality to the partnership, and his dialogue frequently lightens the tone during tense situations, entertaining audiences while also strengthening the chemistry between the two protagonists. His sense of humor serves an important narrative function, too, since action films can become overly heavy if every scene focuses purely on danger and conflict. By giving Murata a sharp wit and relaxed attitude, the screenplay creates emotional variety. Brandon Lee's natural charisma enhances these lines considerably, while the script provides the words. Lee's delivery gives them life, and his timing, expressions, and confidence turn many simple exchanges into memorable moments. The relationship between Kenner and Murata represents the screenplay's greatest achievement. Their partnership follows the classic buddy cop formula, but the writing keeps their interactions genuinely engaging. Initially, the two men clash because of their different personalities. Kenner values discipline and caution, while Murata prefers improvisation and spontaneity, and these differences generate conflict, humor, and character development. The screenplay develops their relationship carefully over time rather than becoming instant friends. They gradually earn each other's respect, a progression that feels natural because it grows out of shared experience rather than sudden shifts in behavior. Their conversations often reveal as much through subtext as through direct statements, and beneath the jokes and disagreements lies a growing recognition that each has valuable qualities to offer. By the film's conclusion, audiences believe in their friendship because the screenplay has let it develop organically. The villain Yoshida benefits from strong dialogue as well. Many action movie antagonists rely mainly on physical threats, but Yoshida is given lines that emphasize intelligence, confidence, and control. His dialogue carries a sense of superiority. He speaks like a man accustomed to power and obedience, and that verbal authority helps establish him as a formidable opponent long before any physical confrontation occurs. The screenplay avoids making Yoshida purely theatrical or cartoonish. While he certainly has traits associated with classic action villains, his conversations often reveal calculation and patience, qualities that make him more threatening because they suggest he's capable of long-term planning rather than simple aggression. The script also uses dialogue to reinforce themes of honor, loyalty, and power throughout. The marketing and promotion of Showdown in Little Tokyo offer an interesting look at how action films were sold to audiences in the early 1990s. Released in 1991, the movie entered a highly competitive entertainment landscape dominated by action stars, blockbuster franchises, and a growing home video market. Unlike modern film campaigns, which lean heavily on social media, streaming platforms, viral content, and digital advertising, the promotional strategy for Showdown in Little Tokyo depended on more traditional methods of theatrical trailers, television commercials, magazine ads, newspaper listings, posters, and video store visibility. Although the film didn't get the massive promotional budget associated with the biggest Hollywood blockbusters of its era, the marketing team worked hard to highlight its strongest selling points: an action-packed storyline, martial arts sequences, a distinctive cultural setting, and, most importantly, its cast. The promotional campaign focused heavily on presenting the film as an exciting action experience while emphasizing the appeal of its leading actors. One of the marketing department's biggest challenges was positioning the movie within a crowded marketplace. The action genre was thriving in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and audiences regularly saw advertisements featuring heavily armed heroes, dangerous villains, explosions, and dramatic confrontations. To stand out, Showdown in Little Tokyo needed a recognizable identity, so the studio chose to emphasize the partnership between Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. That decision made sense commercially. Lundgren was already an established action star thanks to performances in Rocky IV, Masters of the Universe, Red Scorpion, The Punisher, and several other films, and his name carried real recognition among action fans. Promotional materials frequently highlighted his imposing physical presence, with posters and advertisements often showing him in action-oriented poses designed to communicate strength, confidence, and toughness. Audiences familiar with his previous work could immediately identify him as the kind of hero commonly associated with the action genre. At the same time, Brandon Lee represented an intriguing marketing opportunity. Although he hadn't yet achieved widespread mainstream fame, his connection to Bruce Lee generated curiosity among audiences interested in martial arts cinema, and the marketing campaign frequently showcased his athleticism and combat skills. Trailers often included shots of Lee performing martial arts techniques, emphasizing speed, agility, and precision, moments that helped distinguish the movie from standard police action films by highlighting its martial arts elements. For many viewers, Brandon Lee became one of the film's most attractive features. Interestingly, the marketing strategy positioned the movie as both a buddy cop film and a martial arts action movie, a dual identity that let the studio appeal to multiple audience segments at once. Fans of traditional action cinema could expect gunfights and explosions, while martial arts enthusiasts could look forward to hand-to-hand combat and physical choreography. The theatrical poster became one of the most important promotional tools of the era, serving a function similar to modern digital thumbnails, so it needed to grab attention quickly and communicate the film's tone immediately. The poster for Showdown in Little Tokyo embraced the visual language of action cinema. Images of the protagonists, weapons, dramatic lighting, and urban environments worked together to create a sense of excitement and danger, clearly signaling that audiences were being offered a high-energy action experience. Color choices played an important role in the poster's effectiveness. Two dark backgrounds contrasted with brighter highlights to help key visual elements stand out, creating a dramatic appearance consistent with what audiences expected from action movies. The title itself also contributed to the marketing effort. Showdown in Little Tokyo is a memorable name that immediately communicates conflict, and location of the word showdown suggests an inevitable confrontation, while Little Tokyo introduces a unique cultural setting. Together, they create curiosity and distinguish the movie from more generic action releases. The theatrical trailer served as another essential promotional tool. Trailers of the period followed a recognizable formula designed to maximize excitement in a short running time, and the trailer for Showdown in Little Tokyo focused heavily on action scenes, martial arts sequences, explosions, gun battles, and character introductions. Quick cuts, dramatic music, and memorable dialogue built momentum rather than explaining the entire plot, emphasizing spectacle and entertainment value in a way that matched audience expectations of the time. Trailers back then were designed primarily to generate excitement rather than provide detailed narrative information. Television advertising further expanded the film's visibility. Commercials aired during programming likely to attract action movie fans, including sports broadcasts, action TV series, and primetime entertainment, condensing the film's appeal into brief segments that highlighted its most exciting moments. Print advertising remained an important part of film marketing during the early 1990s as well. Movie magazines, entertainment publications, and newspapers frequently ran ads promoting upcoming releases, and Showdown in Little Tokyo appeared in many of these outlets, helping raise awareness among potential audiences. Magazine coverage also played a valuable role. Interviews with cast members, behind-the-scenes photos, and promotional articles helped introduce the film to readers, and action movie publications were particularly interested in Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee, making them useful platforms for generating interest. One interesting aspect of the marketing campaign involved the cultural setting of the film itself. To fully appreciate Showdown in Little Tokyo, it helps to compare it with other action films of its era, as well as similar movies featuring martial arts, buddy cop partnerships, and organized crime narratives. Released in 1991, the film arrived during what's often considered the golden age of action cinema. when Hollywood was producing a constant stream of movies built around charismatic heroes, explosive action, memorable villains, and larger-than-life storytelling. While Showdown in Little Tokyo shares plenty of characteristics with these films, it also has qualities that make it distinct, and examining its similarities and differences helps explain why the movie has maintained a lasting reputation despite never achieving blockbuster status. Perhaps the most obvious comparison is with Lethal Weapon. Released in 1987, Lethal Weapon helped define the modern buddy cop formula. Like Showdown in Little Tokyo, it centers on two police officers with contrasting personalities who have to learn to work together while confronting dangerous criminals, and Chris Kenner and Johnny Murata clearly fit within that tradition. A Kenner disciplined, serious, and emotionally burdened by his past, Murata energetic, humorous, and more impulsive. This dynamic resembles the relationship between Martin Riggs and Roger Muttorf in Lethal Weapon. But there are important differences. Lethal Weapon places greater emphasis on psychological drama and emotional trauma. Riggs struggles with profound grief and self-destructive tendencies, giving the film a darker emotional core. Showdown in Little Tokyo, while exploring personal loss through Kenner's backstory, stays more focused on action and entertainment. The tone is noticeably different too. Lethal Weapon balances humor with emotional seriousness, while Showdown in Little Tokyo embraces a more colorful, energetic style that often prioritizes spectacle and martial arts action over psychological complexity. Another useful comparison is Tango Cash, released in 1989. That film starred Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell as mismatched police officers framed by a criminal mastermind, much like Showdown in Little Tokyo, and it relied heavily on the chemistry between its lead actors. Both films embrace larger-than-life action sequences and humorous exchanges between their protagonists, and both feature villains with significant resources and influence. But Tango Cash leans further into comedy and exaggeration, while Showdown in Little Tokyo incorporates stronger martial arts elements and cultural themes. The relationship between Kenner and Murata feels a bit more grounded than the partnership in Tango Cash. Both films clearly favor entertainment over realism, but Showdown in Little Tokyo spends more time exploring personal history and cultural identity. A particularly interesting comparison can be made with Die Hard. Released in 1988, Die Hard transformed action cinema by presenting a more vulnerable and relatable hero. John McClane succeeds through determination and resourcefulness rather than overwhelming physical dominance. Chris Kenner represents a different kind of protagonist. Like many action heroes of the era, he has exceptional combat abilities and physical strength, which puts Showdown in Little Tokyo closer to traditional action conventions than Die Hard. Even so, both films share an emphasis on personal stake. McClane fights to save his family, while Kenner confronts criminals tied to his own traumatic past, and in both cases, that emotional motivation strengthens audience investment in the action. When examining martial arts influences, comparisons with Brandon Lee's later film, The Crow, become unavoidable.